The shout now. Well done, Bobby Johnson. Well done, Manchester United.
Beckham. Into Sheringham. And Solskjaer has won it. And it's half saved it. United again. Rooney. A magnificent goal by Robin van Persie.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of United Hour, your official redcafe.net podcast on all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Alex.
I'm Nick.
My name is Jeff.
And I'm Ed.
And Jeff is, who've we got there?
The artist formerly known as Craig.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sorry, it was a 21 Jump Street joke.
No, it's a good film. Probably the lightest this podcast episode will be, I'm sure. Because although we were looking forward to a ray of sunshine of a podcast episode this week with your standard default victory over, what should be a relatively simple game. United obviously fucked things up for us, and we're here with a post-mortem of what was arguably the most tragic game of football since good old David Moyes went on a trip to Greece. So really, where I want to start, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot, and I'm expecting serious answers, Craig, is I just want to know, in 3 words or less, I want you to sum up yesterday's performance. And that performance, for those of you who've been living under a rock or have cast it from your memory, was a unfortunate 3-2 loss to Brighton.
Absolute garbage fire.
Woeful, tepid, uninspiring.
Nick?
Same old shite.
Nice, I like it.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. We actually lost this game last season, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you say, it's an obvious win and everything, but we did actually lose the equivalent match last year. Yeah, it was exactly these kind of games that we kept losing last year. We actually had a relatively decent record in the big matches, and it was just these kind of matches that did us. And yeah, I don't know, don't seem to have learnt from that.
The margin was a lot tighter last season, though. It was a bit atrocious this time.
The margin was tighter last season, and also it was post City winning the league and us, I believe, securing our place in the FA Cup final. So there was a bit of players trying to save themselves for the final.
Yeah, dead rubber, wasn't it?
I think
Yeah.
in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't even just that game. There was loads of games like this where
I agree.
we lost against teams that you'd think would be relegation fodder.
We lost against all the relegation teams, right? All the newly promoted teams last season we lost to. So it was Brighton, Huddersfield, and Newcastle. I mean, Huddersfield aren't a bad team. It's not like they got absolutely smashed on Sunday by
The depressing thing about that is De Bruyne is injured for 3 months and they still won 6-1. Their best player, arguably, and they still took a team apart 6-1.
And it wasn't a scoreline that flatters them. It was it was a comprehensive. I mean, it could have been 10 in all honesty. Not that we want to spend a great deal of time on that, but I do think it's relevant.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's in the back of a lot of United fans' minds, but not just us. Like, I half wonder if it was on the players' minds at all going into that game. Who knows if it is or not? Who knows if they pay attention? If they do, how much impact it has? I have absolutely no idea. But we just weren't with it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think, Nick, you said same old shit, and I'd agree, and it was essentially just a shit show. Didn't start terribly, but I think the problems that were there last week remained.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problems from last season, isn't it? Not just, last week or whatever. I mean, it's difficult to put down on what exactly went wrong, and you've got to give a lot of credit to Brighton.
Do you, though? Because we never challenged their defence at all. They didn't have to worry. Every ball was played in front of them unless Pogba was putting it behind over the byline, over the end line.
Yeah, but that's after we're down already. I'm even talking, when it's still 0-0.
As far as I'm concerned, this wasn't a team who were raising their game and playing the best football they could.
No, I don't think so.
And they were because you do get those times where these teams just score sublime goals. It wasn't like, a 40-yarder that we couldn't have stopped, or a soft free kick was given away that they pulled it in. They were outplaying us. And And I don't believe they needed to do anything special for it. We basically completely played into their hands, right? You're away from home. What do? You don't give the fans any encouragement. You don't give the opposition any encouragement. You make sure that you keep your focus and you concentrate and you get the basics right. You tackle hard, you win the second balls, and you keep possession. And that can be playing it round the back. It can be keeping your shape and containing their possession, whatever it needs to be. You don't give any encouragement. And even before their first goal, there was multiple, for me, warning signs. That they were getting in behind us fairly easily, that they were creating chances that they shouldn't have been. And then, I mean, Craig, do you want to walk us through the capitulation of our defence and talk us through what happened there?
What happened is that they weren't really focusing well enough on what was actually happening, because like multiple times, like before the first goal, like you said, there was the moment with Knockout where the ball got passed over and he ended up running onto it and then hitting it wide.
Yeah.
But that same scenario happened again and again and again. Like our defensive line was pushed up and they weren't paying attention to the man. They were allowing him to run on to the pass every single time, and they didn't tighten up the deadline or whatever. There was no like tactical shift to actually try and stop it. They just carried on the exact same way. And you can't. Like when a team spots an opening like that, they're gonna take advantage every single time. And this is Brighton. They're not some like tactical masterclass team. Like we should have tightened our defence and actually paid attention. We were ball watching too much. Because one of the things that some defenders do in football is they do watch the ball way more than they watch the man. And you have to watch the last man, because they will run past you.
Yeah.
And that's what happened every time. And it was absolutely ridiculous. And then there was the penalty that we gave away as well. It was exactly the same as the penalty Jones gave away, where he came from behind very rashly and barely we didn't even get a ball this time, actually.
I completely agree. So let's break down that first goal then. So what happened? They had the ball on the left-hand side, right? Does anyone want to walk us through that goal?
Yeah, that was the one that they crossed it in, and I can't remember who scored, but he got in front of the defender. And
it was some nippy young 34-year-old called Glenn Murray who ghosted in front of our young lean centre-back Lindelof, 30 million centre-back Lindelof. I mean, for me, it was just a catalogue of errors. So they started out on the right with the ball. Last week we spoke about how I think it was Chilwell for Leicester was just up and down that flank all game with no troubles. And that's why I say it seemed like we didn't learn our mistakes from last week. So Mata and Fred were essentially in no man's land. Young's having to deal with two of them. He gets dragged out to the first one too easily, and he just plays it behind him and inside him. So the guy's through on the byline. You then have Bailly running across also into no man's land, equidistance from the 6-yard box and the ball with nothing that he's able to do there. Mata's given up on chasing back. Pereira hasn't really sniffed the danger, and I don't think it's fair to expect him to. He's a young lad in its position he's not really played. I think maybe Herrera definitely and maybe Matic would have got there, but even so, Lindelof, you've got one person in that box in terms of Glenn Murray, and he's got no idea where he is. The guy has managed to pull Lindelof and get in front of him and definitely finish it into the net, and for me, it was just a catalogue of sort of inexcusable errors, at almost every man and every opportunity.
Yeah, but for me, the main person to blame is Lindelof at the end of it. There was other things, obviously, that lead to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for him to just lose his man like that completely is unforgivable. I mean, it was a nice move from Murray, but we're not talking about Aguero here, yeah. Like you say, we're talking about Murray. And yeah, look, he did well to get to it. And he actually, I guess got to give him some credit because he does this kind of like almost circle turn where he comes around the back of him and then comes behind him and ends up in front of him that Lindelof just wasn't ready for at all. But yeah, it comes down to the same issues that we always had: is who's controlling our defence, who's in charge there, who's the leader. And it all, I don't know if you want to get into that now, but yeah, obviously goes into questions of Mourinho wanting to bring in something like Alderweireld. And yeah, that is the big question mark there when you start with Bailey Lindelof. But yeah, they are two players that he's brought in, both young players. But in that scenario, I guess Ashley Young is in that defence and is the senior player, but I'm not sure how much of a leader and organiser he is over there.
He seems to be very shouty, but he's not as much as he's a veteran and a seasoned pro.
He's not an organiser.
Not in defence,
And then of course, normally we would have somebody like, whether it's used to be Carrick, then Matic, in front of the defence. And at the moment, it's Andreas Pereira, who's obviously very young and just learning that position. I mean, those are the players that he's taken off at half-time, isn't it? Pereira and Mata. The more players that can normally keep hold of the ball and all. So I guess he just thought wants to go in for the fight in the second half.
I think for me, the worrying thing about the Lindelof situation is I'd say he's probably our most switched on mentally defender. And so if he's making those kind of errors,
I don't know what's happened to Bailly. Like when he first came in, he looked like he was that player that we needed. And then, I don't know, at the end of last year, he had a bit of a funny period where he all of a sudden wasn't in the team and nobody really knew why. Mm-hmm. Mourinho made a couple of comments saying, he was giving players who were going to the World Cup more minutes, that I thought was a bit strange at the time.
Yeah.
I thought he had a pretty terrible game, really. And that's the problem. When you get the odd mistake, then everybody starts being a bit jittery and hesitant, and it just permeates throughout the team, really. And that's the problem when these things start coming in. You don't know where it ends.
Well, let's move on in that case to the second goal. So I think this was a corner, I believe. Was it a set piece?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. Because we had everyone in the box, and they had about 4 players unmarked in the box.
Pogba gets a half clearance on it. Probably not a good enough clearance, but better than nothing, I guess. And everyone just seemed to switch off. They put it back in. They were the ones who were getting to the ball, and in the end, it seemed to be again another case of maybe this one less is you can pin individual blame, but you can probably say what you were saying a moment ago, Nick, which is who is commanding that defence, who's taking responsibility and clearing that ball. When you look at our defenders of the past, like Vidic, he used to leave himself free on corners, and the amount that he would clear and take charge of was insane. And we can't expect to have a player like him all the time, but even so, there's no one who's sort of taking up that role in that position of, right, I'm going to get my head on this, I'm going to win this, and I'm going to be very aggressive about it. Everyone just seemed to be holding back somewhat, and in the end, we paid for it. And I think that happened a few times last season where not only were we poor in conceding that first goal, but then we didn't seem to react, and we would let them capitalise and score a second.
Yeah, that's the problem. This happened more than once, where this happens. Concede a couple of goals in quick succession.
Burnley, Crystal Palace.
That is when you need somebody on the pitch. Yeah, you need a leader on the pitch to get into the players and say, calm down, no big deal. We've conceded a goal, but yeah, plenty of time left. Just keep doing what you're doing. But instead, this whole kind of worry, hesitancy just goes through the team, and that's why you end up conceding the second goal just 2 minutes later.
I'm not sure we needed to keep doing what we were doing. We needed someone on there berating them for it, really.
Yeah, but it's more just keeping people calm, really. It's not saying that you're doing anything great, but it's just telling people don't start making more mistakes because you're worried about not trusting the other guy.
No,
that's
of course.
The point. It's just like getting everybody back to as if saying, look, still plenty of time, that kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah, maybe is Pogba doing that? I know. I hope that he can grow into this captain. I think he should be our captain, and I think he should. But Mourinho's already said he's going to give it back to Valencia when he comes back, which to me is not a good decision because I just don't see him as any kind of leader, captain material whatsoever.
He doesn't even speak English. How is he supposed to talk to referees?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm not sure. For me, that is a big thing. We've been lacking that. It's something we've talked about on this podcast for about 4 years now. Lacking leaders on the pitch and in defence specifically. Although by now, De Gea, I remember when, like I said, we started this podcast, we said, look, De Gea can't be expected to do that because he's only 22, 23. But by now, he should actually be the one who's in control of the whole defence. He's old enough now, he's experienced enough, he's been around, so he should be now taking responsibility for organising everybody in front of him.
I think, was it Edwin van der Sar or Peter Schmeichel before the World Cup said De Gea's next stage of development is to be more commanding in his area, and being that voice at the back.
It's not just his next stage. That for me is the only area of his game he really needs to improve. He still seems to be very quiet. He doesn't seem, in two senses. One, I still don't feel 100% confident that he's always going to, like when he comes out for the ball, he does a good job, but I still think there are times that he could come out and claim a ball when he doesn't. He still seems to be somewhat hesitant at that for me. And he's the consistent member of that team. I guess one question that I wanted to ask was, you don't feel that we've got this player, that player we needed, on the bench or injured? You don't think? Do you think that second goal's happening if two players, I guess Matic or Smalling, are on the pitch?
I think Smalling is probably a better leader than who's on the pitch at the moment.
Yeah. Smalling's also got a clanger in him in most games, so it's hard to say, isn't it, really?
And I guess we saw that manifestation, Nick, of anxiety, of fear, of wondering what's going on in the third goal. But before that, it did look like, actually, we might turn things around here. This might be another game where United concede 2 goals and then manage to pull it back.
Young, flat service towards Lindelof again. We've seen that before. The shot comes in. Oh, the header from Lukaku! And it's 2-1. Luke Shaw limps away. It was his shot initially, bounced over some hapless Brighton defenders, and Lukaku able to nod it into the net, and that'll soothe things for Manchester United. It's 2-1.
Good goal by Lukaku, who I thought had a very disappointing game. And at that point, were you guys thinking, right, this is it, we're back on here, I'm guessing?
Yeah. I got excited for a second.
I mean, I sort of maintained the hope that we'd get back into it until about 15 minutes left. And then it was that point where I started accepting that this is going to be the result.
So, yeah, we've got that goal. And you think at that point, right, the pressure's on Brighton here. The momentum swung back in our favour. You would expect at that point for us to completely dominate the game. But instead, we, again, as Craig, you were saying earlier, just completely opened up and left a massive gap for them to take advantage of. They were through on goal and as you said, by rings down whoever it was in an incredibly rash manner, which was just an astounding decision as far as I'm concerned. And I agree with you, Nick, that I think he's probably another player that we can add to the list of promising talent who's joined United, who's then regressed with time. And there'll be people who call me knee-jerk for that, and there'll be people who still have a lot of faith in buy-in, and I'm not saying that I'm writing him off, but like you said, in his first season, he was full of promise. Last season, yes, he was injured, but it also seems that Mourinho didn't fully trust him when he did come back. And then here you are after, a good game against Leicester and then a stupid mistake, just a completely rash performance.
He seems to have got more erratic with time.
And what do you think that's down to?
I couldn't say. Is it poor coaching? Is Mourinho's coaching staff not the best in the world, as he'd like to think? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's down to the kind of, partnership. When you have these, we've had some amazing central defensive partnerships over time where players complement each other. And there's normally, has to be somebody who's in charge there, directing everything there. And I wonder, out of Bailey and Lindelof, who is that one?
Well, in the past, I'd say it's been Lindelof. But, I mean, as a sporting professional, surely you should have the mentality to take the responsibility upon yourself to play in a rational manner and not go diving into challenges like that. All he had to do was close the space.
Yeah, that's it. It's just bad defensive mistakes, bad decisions being made. But yeah, that third goal is the one that, kind of almost ends the tie, really. But still, that second half was a massive disappointment. Yeah. That is the big disappointment, where you still say you come back into it, see what you can create. And yeah, it was until Fellaini came on, there was nothing.
Oh, Fellaini did nothing, though.
No, that's not true at all. Until he came, as soon as he came on, we actually created some chances. Started having a bit of the ball around their box and everything. That's the only time I saw us actually having a chance. after Fellaini. Fellaini did nothing. That's where the penalty came from late on as well.
Oh yeah, but yeah, he got us the penalty. But all of the substitutions were ineffective. I thought not one of them really changed the game in any way, shape or form. It was constant pumps up long into Lukaku that usually went too long, over the line. There was no sort of cohesion in our attack whatsoever. It was either balls to feet or pumps too far long.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's the thing though. When they're 2 goals up, obviously it's difficult, and we know that we always have this trouble.
2 goals up, 1 goal up, no goals up, shouldn't matter. We should play the best way, the way that we play, and take the game to them. We didn't do that at all.
Yeah, but that's always the problem, you see, when you look at a Mourinho team, is that his way of playing is all set up to score the first goal and then defend it. And when you're then coming from behind, although, we actually had a good record in still coming from behind, when he's kind of forced to let them go free and just play for it. But when you're 2 goals behind, it's not so difficult for the other team to sit, give you no space. And as you say, then it's just chancing long balls in and hoping something drops. But yeah, for me, it did make a difference when Fellaini finally came on, was when we actually started having some kind of play around their box, creating something. At least before that, there was nothing at all.
I think I'm closer in line with Ed. So first thing I'll say is that for me, the substitutions were quite lazy choices by Mourinho to bring off Mata, who is probably the one player who you would have trusted on that pitch to continue with some composure, to continue keeping the ball moving, to keep things ticking, to play it around the edge of their box and not just hoof it and go for the Hollywood ball every time. A player who has shown that he can get very, very important goals for us in big games, in games where we're looking to come back. And he took him off, the technical player who probably was not probably, but was 100% needed when you see how the game ended up playing out. But secondly, in Pereira, taking off the young kid defensive midfielder just seemed like the easy choice. But actually, as much as you could say that Pereira had a small part to play in that goal that we conceded, though I think that's very harsh considering the circumstances. I thought that, he was one of the few players who, particularly at the start of the game, was still on the ball, seemed to be very composed. He was fizzing passes into players. He was playing them with a bit of pace, but he was also playing them somewhat sensibly. And, when that third goal that we mentioned killed it, as well as by making the mistake, there was Fred receiving the ball in the middle from what I think was a poor goal kick from De Gea, and making the silly decision to try and chest it down in turn when he's got no one around him. He knows he should know that he's going to get no time on the ball, and also with our centre back spread because it was a goal kick, and if they win that ball, they're going to have an open playing field to run into. So I just felt that the decision to take those 2 players off was quite lazy, and I think there could have been some better choices. But
who would you have taken off then?
De Gea.
I think Fred would have been a better person to take off than Pereira potentially. I think that Martial showed absolutely nothing in that first half. For a player who should have had the motivation, he's got his chance. Sure, not through the manager's confidence, but he didn't have to pick him when they got the injury to Sanchez. There were other options for him that he could have played instead, and he didn't even try and take his chance. He had one moment at the start of the game where Pogba played him a ball and he ran through on goal with a good touch and won a corner. But in the whole game, he didn't find Lukaku with one pass. There was that throw from De Gea when we were 3-1 down where he just lost the ball on the edge of our own box with no awareness or anything. He looked, to me, it just looks like a player who's decided he wants to go. And you can maybe make an excuse for that in pre-season, though I don't think it's right for a player who wants to leave. But when, the time's gone and you're here, fucking knuckle down and get on with it.
Yeah.
Get your transfer next summer or in January. Work hard, get a place in the team, put yourself in the shop window, and just have a bit of respect for your own profession and for your own ability. Show what you've got. Don't sulk and mope, which is what he seemed to do. So I think he would have been another player to take off ahead of them.
Yeah, I do actually agree that, Martial did nothing. it was a chance for him to show and say, yeah, look, I should be playing on the left, but no,
100%.
Didn't justify coming into the team at all, unfortunately.
Not even a little bit either, yeah. Like, for me, it was a defining moment where I'm now just somewhat done with him. You know, if you're not going to have the desire and the respect for your teammates and for the fans to put even a fucking ounce of effort in, then why bother? So I was incredibly disappointed with him. And yeah, I actually, one thing that I think Mourinho did very well the last 2 seasons is Van Gaal used to bring Fellaini on for the sake of it, but he seemed to have no idea how to actually use him a lot of the time. Like when he was bringing him on to change a game further forward, I mean, even though he put some good performances in a deeper position, when he was bringing him on further forward, he was putting him on the last man on their centre-backs, and they were winning those headers because Fellaini isn't great in the air. You want him to be on the long diagonal. You want him to have someone nearby him to win the second ball. And I didn't feel that we did that very well. I agree with you that he seemed to act as like a pivot at the top of the field for us, so we were able to get a bit closer to their box. But did we make any chances off it? Did anything really happen because of it?
Well, it was the only times we were even getting the ball in the last third of the pitch, really.
For me, it was the equivalent of in rugby where you punt it down the field and basically...
Yeah, look, I'm not saying it's good or it's pretty, but I'm just saying it's the only time we've even getting the ball anywhere around their box and actually having...
Yeah, it doesn't count though, does it? Really? Like, unless you make something of it, it doesn't mean a thing.
That, and we were playing those balls in all game anyway. It's just that we put Fellaini on to receive them that it started looking a bit different. The style of football was just wrong.
Only thing Fellaini should receive is a P45.
Sure.
I think that's unfair.
There are plenty of listeners who would no doubt agree, and obviously we battle to keep him this summer.
Yeah, but Fellaini's like the drunk girl at the end of the night.
This match, for me, like Fellaini is one of the only ones who's actually showing some kind of desire and whatever to make something happen. Whereas you say, Martial, we got nothing from him. Rashford, I didn't see anything from him. Lingard was trying at least, but his touch was off. You could see he's not 100% ready for the playing again, really. That's why balls where he would normally hold that and pass it off, he was losing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's you can complain about Fellaini and whatever, but until he came on, I think that second half there was nothing.
It was more the use of him. Like if we're gonna use him, then use him right. At least if you're gonna play a shit style of football because ultimately you're left with no choice and that's the only plan left to you. Fair enough, by the way. Like I'm not against doing that in times of need and urgency, but at least do it well. At least do it properly.
No, but the only reason it wasn't being done well was because Pogba was just lost it completely.
Yeah.
Second half, especially when he needs to step up and make that difference. Just there was a 15-20 minute period where I think he didn't even manage to complete one pass basically, yeah. And he was sending these long balls just off target again and again and again. And I can't remember which game it was, but there was a similar game last season where he just couldn't just even make one pass count. He did actually at least make some comments at the end and accept that he was way off. So he knew it. I mean, yeah, last week I'd come out and we were singing the praises of Fred, Pereira, Pogba midfield and talking about how Fred and Pereira both had great passing accuracy stats, both in the 90s. And in fact, they did again in this match. So it wasn't really giving the ball away in midfield that was the big issue. Fred's still at 92. Andreas is at 91. I mean, Pogba's obviously a lot lower than that because we know he was giving it away again and again and again. But yeah, so it wasn't the passing accuracy that was any different there. But yeah, I give it a lot of credit to Brighton, but the problem is...
I don't think you can give Brighton that much credit because we didn't test them. I wouldn't say they were solid at the back, they just weren't tested.
I think you can give them credit because, if you look at the money spent, if you look at where Brighton have come from in the last few years...
Of course you have to give Brighton credit. I mean,
fair enough. But at the same time, it's not as though they were under the clock for 45 minutes.
They didn't need to play anywhere near as well as you thought, considering the result and whatnot. We completely played into their hands and we didn't turn the screw at all. We made free changes, bold changes, we made them early and nothing fucking happened. The 3-2 genuinely flatters us. Yeah. For me it was one of our worst performances post Ferguson. There was that Fulham game which I think also ended 3-2 under Moyes. notorious Fulham game with 90 crosses or whatever ridiculous number it was. But in fairness to Moyes, we created a hell of a lot of chances. We were putting them under a lot of pressure. For me, in this game, we created absolutely nothing after they went 3-1 up with, like I say, a hell of a lot of football left to play. And that Pogba performance, not only was he, every time he got the ball, he was trying to be the hero. I think on the chat we coined it as, Steven Gerrard syndrome, essentially, where the team's losing and he feels like it's his responsibility to take the game by the scruff of the neck, but ultimately all he ends up doing is harming the team because he's trying things, and that's something at least. But
it's not necessarily a bad thing, but he just puts too much pressure on himself, I think.
And it wasn't just the kicking the balls out of play or giving them possession back. It was also the fouls he was making in ridiculous positions, just allowing them to completely alleviate pressure, to relax, to regain position, to regain shape, to regain focus and concentration. Every time we conceded a foul, it gave the crowd a boost, it gave the opposition a boost, but also our players' heads seemed to drop a little bit further, and it just completely lacked maturity. Just quickly before we move on from Pogba, you mentioned how, we were singing his praises last week, and I think one thing that Imran mentioned was how the difference between him and Valencia is that Pogba will actually care about the captaincy. He'll change his performance, for it, and hopefully he'll raise his game towards it. But I think we also saw the negative side of that as well, where that pressure just became too much for him. He wasn't at all composed. He didn't keep his head at all, and for me it was a total meltdown, an absolute total meltdown.
And not to pile on the criticism, but he doesn't seem to play to the whistle either. We decide he's been fouled, and then he stops and watches the play go on until he realises the ref isn't going to blow, and then he decides to saunter back and help defend, or lightly jog towards the player in possession.
We lost today against Brighton. 2 times in a row we lose against them, and I think that shouldn't happen. Last year we had almost maybe the same attitude as today, and it's not right. I think it's not right. Myself first, should have done much better, do maybe less mistakes.
We probably should touch on those comments, Nick. Now for me, when I first heard that he'd taken some responsibility and claimed that his attitude wasn't right, I thought, great, ultimately he's probably talking about the approach to the game, in terms of, the attitude of how they get back into it, and whatnot. But when you listen and read that comment of the attitude we had was not like we wanted to beat them, and then him saying that he was the same, I don't know, it's just, there are a lot of people who feel it's inexcusable. There are other people who are saying, well, fucking good on him for coming out and being brave enough and taking some accountability. And I guess I just wondered where you guys fell, which side of the coin you guys fell on that, really.
On the whole, I'd rather someone accept that performance someone in the team accepting that performance just wasn't good enough at the end of the day. And to me, I think it takes a lot for someone to come out and say that, more than it does to say, we'll try harder next time.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to see him come out with these kind of comments, and I want to see the captain come out after we lose and explain to us what he thinks wrong and what he's going to do about it. That's what I want to see. Whereas, we've never heard anything from Antonio Valencia in years and years and years of what he thinks about anything.
Or it's like those Mata blogs, all sorry, but it's the same performance the next week, hugs at the end. And I love the guy.
It's not the same here. It's this, coming out. Yeah, you may be facing up to the cameras, but again, if it's the same again, which, as we said, this isn't the first time we've put in a performance like this, then as much as it's good to take responsibility, unless he's going to show some learnings from it, and unless the team are, then it really doesn't mean anything, right?
I find the apology a crock of shit. I find it absolutely pathetic.
Explain, Craig. Explain.
Because the captain should never have that kind of attitude in the first place, so he shouldn't even have to come and apologise for it. The captain should always have the never say die attitude. He should be working his bollocks off on that pitch. He should be running himself into the ground. He should be trying to do everything perfectly. He shouldn't be trying all the bullshit Pogba tried. Pogba shouldn't, if he's going to keep trying that crap as captain, he shouldn't be captain, in my opinion. Like, he was trying those stupid turns with like 2-3 players around him and losing the ball.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
I was just going to say, there was a point in the game where he pirouetted outside his own box.
Yeah, exactly. Right on the ball. And there were 2 players and they dispossessed him. You know, like, at the end of the day, right, if the entire team plays shit, you should be able to look at that team and say, everyone played shit, but the captain, he worked his bollocks off and he tried his best. Yeah, it didn't work. But at the end of the day, he tried, and that is what matters as a captain. He should be a shining beacon of hope for everybody on that team, and he wasn't that today. In my opinion, he's too immature to be captain. He shouldn't be captain. We should have someone else captain. I don't know who should be captain.
Fellaini.
But no, never seriously, never in a million years should Fellaini be captain.
Go on then, Craig. Who should be captain, Craig? Who should be captain?
Honestly, nobody in that team. I don't think anybody in our team is truly worthy of being a captain. None of them. Like you said, Young isn't a take charge kind of player. And to be honest, who's going to listen to a guy who likes to eat bird shit? Valencia don't speak English. De Gea's way too quiet at the back with his top knot when he grows it. Lukaku's, he's good, but he hasn't been at the club long enough. Like, no one else in the club. Like, Rashford, Martial too young. Martial's a piece of shit anyway. He should be sold. Nobody else in our club is good enough to be captain right now.
Luke Shaw.
No, not even him. Nobody. We should resign the captaincy.
One goal, one assist.
That actually is what Mourinho's pretty much done. He's kind of made the captaincy just a pointless thing. Yeah. I said it last week. Just pass the armband around. Whoever's the oldest player. He's made a few comments before that, it's not that important who wears the armband because we have...
He says that, but Terry was his captain, wasn't he?
Yeah. And, he even had in that team characters like Drogba and whatever.
And we've seen some fantastic captains at United as well, so it's disappointing to me that that's not seen as a bigger thing. But I do appreciate that there's a real lack of options at the moment. I think Matic probably would be the best choice. Obviously he's still fairly recent in terms of his time with the club, but in terms of maturity and leadership qualities, he's probably the only sensible option that we've got left. Not that matters because Mourinho seems pretty set in his decision. I guess we should probably, although I don't want to, we should probably mention the penalty that we scored to make it 3-2.
I was actually worried when Pogba stepped up for that, but fair play to him. He put it away pretty well. I think it was Newcastle as well the other day that Kennedy had an absolute mare of a match. Nearly got sent off, was hitting every free kick into the wall, steps up for a last minute penalty and messed it up completely. And I was worried that it was going to be the same thing, but he put it away pretty nicely, thankfully.
Kennedy was the first time in something like 8 years that a player went 45 minutes without making a successful pass. It felt like Pogba did the same the other day, but apparently not. But yeah, it was weird though, right? Because Pogba did his step up from last week, or at least he started to, and then he just fucking sprinted at the ball, and I can't decide if it was an intentional ploy to confuse the keeper, if he started his usual run up and then just thought, fuck this, I shouldn't be messing around here.
I think that's it.
Or if that's maybe just his normal penalty and he doesn't take as long as he did against Leicester, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's one of the former two, and I'm just not sure which.
I think it's the second one.
I actually think he just forgot how many steps he was supposed to take. For like last week he counted them all, and then this week he was like, shit, was it 20 or 30? And he was just
maybe
like, fuck it, bang.
Maybe he thought the ref would blow the whistle if he didn't take the penalty quick enough.
Probably,
day. Who knows? But yeah, it was weird. But anyway, it was a great penalty. I'm with you, Nick. I put it in the United Hour WhatsApp group that I was 100% confident that he was missing that penalty. And I think I still am confident that he's missing that penalty even after he scored it. But he did score it. It was a great penalty. But ultimately, it was far too little, far too late. Right? The game was over.
You and your colleagues, they were really critic with me when in previous seasons I was probably too honest, too open in my analyzing, and I was probably too honest and too open about analyzing players' performances. So don't ask me to do what you critic so much on myself. So expect from me to be really happy to say after Leicester A, B, C, D, amazing performances, this and that. Don't expect me to go in the other direction.
We've discussed Pogba's comments post-game. Mourinho had a few comments, not many, and he wasn't his usual self.
Grow up.
It wasn't helpful in the slightest as far as I was concerned. And I don't think anyone's ever... For me, no one ever minds when a manager speaks candidly about a performance, when he just says, look, we weren't good enough, we made mistakes, which he did do, but doesn't. It's when he lays blame into players and really goes deep on them like they did last season. Sometimes some saying that it amounted to bullying that was the issue. And it was just incredibly passive-aggressive, I thought, and it didn't make me feel any better about the performance or anything like that.
I don't understand why he cares. What's he doing? Is he spending all his time reading every article that comes out about him?
No, he's signed up to Amazon Prime and been watching the Man City documentary, it seems. So yeah,
that's sack him now if he did that then.
I've not seen any of this documentary, but I did actually see some comments from Mourinho, and it seemed quite good that he was bantering pretty back well at them. Apparently they'd had some T-shirts printed or something.
Yeah, so that's the strange...
That's the kind of thing I want my manager to be coming out with.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually the weird thing about this week. So we had all that negative build-up to the opening game of the season against Leicester. But since winning that, with Pogba's good performance, after a few days of uncertainty after his quotes, Mourinho completely put all of that to bed in his pre-match press conference, saying he couldn't be happier with Pogba. He's been fantastic. He's given him everything he desires. There's no problems between us.
And then Pogba was absolutely awful. Maybe he needs to go back to slacking him off. Yeah, maybe there's something in that.
But a lot of people were praising him for putting that to bed, to not reacting to it, to putting an arm around the shoulder and extending an olive branch essentially. But also, he spoke about this City documentary. So Nick, basically the documentary followed them around last season, and they were at the United game, the derby where we won 3-2. Obviously, they were meant to win the title that day. So as we've heard since, they had fireworks and flags and T-shirts printed off ready to celebrate. But in the dressing room, and I think they spoke about it being, versus Mourinho's defence. And I think the narrative and the literal narrator's comments on the game with it is Pep's attacking versus Mourinho's park the bus style. And then they spent an extended period showing the fans singing the Park the Bus song that they were singing last season. Mourinho said, you can't buy class, and they should give me royalties because it's the only way they're selling the documentary, and they don't have to pay me those royalties if they give me the T-shirts. And yeah, you're right, it was a fucking great response.
I like that,
yeah. Yeah, it was, and
that's exactly what you want from Mourinho. That's what he used to be like as well. Yeah. He used to be like that.
Yeah. It was twinkle
we just
in
don't
the
see
eye.
that enough from him anymore. It's something you want where the fans can get behind it. That was the problem all this summer, the negativity and all. It doesn't give the fans anything to get excited about. It doesn't give the fans something to go and get, G'd up for the game or whatever. And he's got to realise that is an important part of being a manager as well.
And actually, all of that, at least in the sort of online bubble that us guys are in, and particularly on Redcalf and Twitter, it seemed to spin, and it seemed like we were turning the screw, and that there was some positivity regaining. And then, we put in that performance. Now, Craig, you've been very, not harsh, but you've been very honest in your assessment of the players. You've been very defensive of Mourinho in the past, and I just wondered sort of what your thoughts on him were. How much blame do you think he has for this game, if any? And what are your thoughts and what's your stance on him and his position at United at the moment?
With regards to the blame game, I think it's 50-50, where obviously he's there telling the players what to do. He's watching the game. You watch the game from home, you could tell that we needed to tighten up our defence and stop them coming in. Mourinho should have seen that. He should have told them what to do. But then the players also, half of them looked like they couldn't really be bothered. Like Pogba wasn't even was just trying stuff he shouldn't have been trying. Martial looked like he couldn't care. Lukaku made a very stupid decision when it came to that shot where he decided to go right instead of left. I just think half the team just didn't look like they didn't really give a shit.
No.
So I think the blame is 50-50. With Mourinho's position, they've given him the vote of confidence, so I'm not sure his position is that strong anymore. Personally, I do think he should stay on a bit more because the job at the club was such it's hard for anyone to really do it, and especially when you got some bell end in a suit saying, this player isn't good enough when he knows nothing about football.
He's talking about you here, Nick. One criticism, so like you say, obviously there's this whole Woodward business, not backing him, deciding that a player isn't good enough, and we've spoke about that. But as Nick mentioned earlier, Lindelof and Bailly are Mourinho's players, but also they're players that he's spent time with. He's had 2 years with Bailly now. He's had 1 year with Lindelof of coaching time, and this is meant to be arguably someone who's seen to have been the best defensive coach in the world, and yet they're making the mistakes that they're making. And you can't say that this is the only game. There was that 4-0 loss to Chelsea. There was the game away at Spurs last season at Wembley. And unfortunately for Mourinho, it was 2 of the other 5 centre-backs that were shocking in that game, and it manifested itself in a terrible performance from the team. What I'm wondering, do you think that Mourinho's negative comments and lack of confidence in the centre-backs we've got at the club, do you think that plays a part in the mistakes that they were making, the pressure that's on them?
I think if it does, then a bit too soft to be professional football players.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make that much difference. I mean, we know that I've always got the feeling that most of the players are actually behind Mourinho. There might be the odd 1 or 2, Martial or whatever, who's not happy with where they're at. Pogba, I don't know how much truth there is in all these rumours, but I think most of the squad are behind Mourinho and do buy into what he's saying and what his plan is, even if, we as fans don't like it. Most, even when players leave the club, that's sometimes when you see players start dishing the dirt. But you see people like Daley Blind leaving and they've only got good things to say about him, saying, this guy is a winner, that everybody's happy in the dressing room. And normally that's the times when, especially a player like that who's barely got in the team, you sometimes hear a bit more of what issues might be in the back room.
It's a fair comment, yeah.
So I haven't never seen that much sign that there's... Because I've seen a few people saying this week that these players looks to me like, some of these players don't want to play for him anymore. And that I don't really buy that. I just think it was at the moment, it's early time in the season. Yeah, it was a bad day. We had some of these last year. But I still think most of the squad are behind him and do buy into it, even though he might slag them off. Even like Luke Shaw this summer was singing the praises of Mourinho, even though he slagged him off again and again last year. I don't know what he says to these players privately and all, but I think man and management-wise that he's probably doing all right. But yeah, he's obviously has put the question mark out there about wanting a centre-back, made it pretty clear. But yeah, we've still got 5 others on the books who are all internationals. So between them somewhere, there must be 2 of them who are decent.
You say that, but I'm not at all confident, Nick. But yeah, you're right. I think that's a very, very good point about leaving players. With Moyes and Van Gaal, people were very quick to step in and comment. Maybe it's just because Mourinho's not letting any of the players who'd have bad things to say about him go. Maybe that's been his tactic the whole time. Who knows? But I think that's a fair comment. I guess them being behind him is a different question to whether his attitude, his negativity, his questioning and clear desire for better centre-backs at the club could still have an effect on confidence and the pressure and the weight that those players feel on their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that seems to be most people's big concern. Is this a typical Mourinho 3rd season? And is there a danger that if we don't nip things in the bud, that we could see us finishing, 7th or 8th and miles behind the rest of the pack?
No, we're not going to finish 7th or 8th or anything. But even if we finish 4th, it's going to be disappointing, isn't it? I mean, I'm not worried about finishing 7th or 8th, but like I say, even if we come 3rd or 4th, I'm not going to be happy with that. I mean, I don't want to speak for Imran because he's not on, but I think probably his comments are more just saying, look, we don't like this style of football. And then if we're going to lose as well, then what's the point? You can take that style and then you expect to go to these kind of games and take a win, whether it's done dirty, whether it's done nice, whatever, you take the win. But if you're going to play shit football and still lose, then there's just no point in it at all, is there?
I think this is Mourinho's last season regardless. I think if he wins the league, he'll walk. And if he
wins the league...
he'll walk. And if it...
He won't. Why would he win the league and walk?
Because I think he'll want to go to another big club and win where it's easier.
I'll be honest, I just can't believe that you're talking about winning the league. Maybe that's me being...
Oh, no, I don't...
Maybe that's me, but, I think the bookies have dropped us down to 25-1 or something crazy.
Oh, we're not winning the league, I know that.
Fair enough. I'm just trying to find Imran's comments because...
Yeah, it says, think Jose has to go sooner rather than later. Otherwise, it could get to December and we could be 10th or something.
There you go. So, and I don't think Imran's the only one that really does see that meltdown on the cards. And it's interesting to hear that you guys are still very confident of top 4. I'm kind of, if I was making a prediction now, it would be probably 4th. I think we may just find a way. But I do think that it's going to be a tough season for us. And I agree that I think this is probably going to be Mourinho's last season, whatever happens. And in which case, why wait?
Who are you going to bring in?
Well, there's been
Giggsy.
There's been these talks of Zidane. From what I can tell, it looks like he's put out there that he's interested in the job. Nick, I know that you think differently, and this is probably just pure story from the media with the negativity about Mourinho at the moment. But there are options out there. I'm not necessarily saying that they're better, but for me it's just becomes clearer and clearer that Mourinho probably isn't the right man for the long term. So at some point we should probably cut our losses.
Yeah, but for me, you give him now, unless things start going absolutely catastrophic. Yeah, Mourinho's given this season to see what he can do. There's no point in chopping and changing. All of a sudden, it's not going to help us, I don't think. You start from scratch again after somebody's bought in players and whatever. So, yeah, I just think it's a lot of knee-jerk talk after the negativity of someone losing one game. People go OTT all the time. And, yeah, these links with Zidane and all, I don't take much notice of it. The transfer window's closed. So the newspapers don't have much to talk about anymore. So, yeah, that's why they have to make things up all of a sudden. There could be something in it, but I take no notice of it, really. There's just, most of the stuff I think is just made up.
Fair enough. And what I would say, though, is that I don't know that a lot of the people calling for Mourinho are reacting in a knee-jerk fashion. I think there are a lot of people who've been unhappy with him for, a long time now.
Yeah, that is the thing, that there is a lot of people who are not happy with him anyway. So whenever you lose, it's all going to come pouring out. And there's always going to, polls of who should be the next manager and whatever. And yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I've been pretty open since day one, even before he started, that I didn't really want him in the first place. But yeah, I still always think that it's a bit OTT to just start calling for somebody's head 2 games into the season.
Fair enough. Right, okay, great. So, as you mentioned a moment ago, Nick, we're playing Spurs next. Does anyone have anything to say in terms of a preview to that? Has anyone got any thoughts on how that game is going to play out? Has anyone got any predictions to make?
5-0 Luke Shaw hat-trick.
It'll be good for my fantasy team. That was my only bonus. Luke Shaw's assist out of that game.
He's going for the golden boot.
Yeah. And by the way, Locker, as I said last week, you said you were top of the league, but yeah, I'm afraid I was top of the league. Just picked you in there.
You entered the league, so we'll see come the end of the season.
I was just waiting to see the start before I entered in it. You see. But yeah, look, if this game goes to plan, then it's going to be 1-0 United. That's what it's been last 2 seasons. The last 6 games, Tottenham have won every game at home, and we've won every game at Old Trafford. And then we had that one Wembley semi-final that we
were fantastic at. Yeah, that was one of the best Mourinho performances, actually. Do we think Mourinho's going to make any changes? Do Lindelof and Baye stay in the team? Do we move to a back three? Do we, if Sanchez doesn't come back in, does Martial get dropped? Like, how do we see us lining up?
Well, we're playing at home, but he's got to do something about the defence after that match. I think Smalling will come back into the team, even though it seems like a bit of a regressive move because everybody was hoping that Lindelof would do it and could be the kind of future of the team. I think that performance the other day is saying you wouldn't really give them another chance at it, especially not against Harry Kane, to be honest. I did mention as well that one of the problems is that Pereira is the one in front of them, whereas the players like Matic can mop up a lot of issues with the defence and protect them a lot, whereas Pereira's going to be good at keeping the ball, recycling it, not giving it away, but he's not going to protect the defence very much. I think Matic is back in training, but I don't think he's going to be ready to start. Then it means you're either throwing in, McTominay.
Pereira was on the bench last game.
That's true, actually. Actually, he's had good games against Spurs. Maybe he can come back into the team. I would expect him to come in and do a bit more of a defensive screening job.
Nick, just because I wanted to make sure that we at least looked it up. So, since 2012, it looks like Spurs have won 5, we've won 5, and there's been 3 draws in there. So you're right that things have been pretty even to me when you compare it versus most teams in the league and Spurs' reputation from 2012. Then that would, at the time, have been like a bogey team, but I guess with their status now.
Yeah, I mean, for the past few years, they've been been a top 4 team for a few years now.
Yeah, sure.
It's a big change for them. I will be going to this match. It'll be my season debut because I missed the Leicester one, unfortunately.
Fantastic. I'm still hoping to join you at that. If anyone's got a spare ticket, do let me know. I'll go to Nick and we'll bring our thoughts back after the game and be here for another moan, no doubt. And I think just quickly, those who are under a rock, United have finally, after a long time of fans, of journalists, of almost everyone calling for it, we've finally come together and put a women's team, which, I believe we all agree is a fantastic, it's fantastic news. I'm not hoping to any misogynists on the podcast, but I think we'd all agree with that, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we've actually got underway. We've got a team together, and we played our first match. And Craig kindly sat and watched it for us.
We won 1-0. And
I'm following the ladies from now.
Yeah, we definitely played better than the men. We've got a very young team as well, actually. A lot of 16, 17, 18-year-olds seem to be in there.
Okay. Do you reckon any of them can make the step across to the men's team?
I mean,
any centre-backs? Anybody look like a centre-back leader?
Honestly, Alex Greenwood on the left back.
How tall is she?
Fantastic, actually. I think she could easily demote Luke Shaw to the women's team and make the jump up instead. I think she'll get the assist in that Luke Shaw should have got on purpose.
Sure.
No, because she's very good at set pieces.
Okay.
She's very good at crossing as well. We actually scored because she got down the left of the ball, crossed it in, and I forgot who scored. But she tapped it in. I forgot her name now.
Supported here by Greenwood. Bolton again. Greenwood shows where she wants the ball. They're queuing up in the middle, and Lizzie Arnott grabs the lead for Manchester United and grabs a piece of history at the same time. It's the first goal ever scored by United's professional women's team, and it could be the winner against the club's fierce rivals. What a moment for Lizzie Arnott.
Lauren James was fantastic. She's only 16 years old. We poached her from Arsenal. For someone so young, she played fantastically.
Okay.
You honestly wouldn't think she was 16. Obviously, Alex Greenwood, who is the captain, she actually played for Liverpool ladies last year. She played really well as well.
Brilliant.
And I think they've actually been quite big signs, haven't they? Because the team, they're not starting in the Women's Premier League.
Yeah,
they're
the Championship,
the second
right?
tier. So, to get any players of worth has actually been quite a big move. Did actually get an email as a season ticket holder, because I think our first home game is this weekend on Saturday against Reading,
I think.
And I think it's actually free entry for season ticket holders. So just, if there's anybody out there, I heard that might be worth going down. And we'll try and keep an eye on it. And maybe Craig can keep us updated with how the women's team are doing.
Yeah, I definitely will. Probably try and watch every game, to be honest.
We need something positive, I think. So if we could make a good push for promotion, and nice to hear as well that we've got a good core of young players in there too.
Yeah.
Well, we do have girls at the academy, don't we? And then they have to leave because we didn't have a women's team.
That's right.
So hopefully...
Yeah, that was the problem, obviously, because once they turned pro, they had to go elsewhere, and now they actually have something bigger to look forward to.
Fantastic. Well, as Nick mentioned, we'll come back to Craig on the ladies cast every week and get his updates on how things are going and how many points we're topping the table with. So I think that'll do for this week. It was a dissection of what was a very, very disappointing game, but I'm sure we'll be in higher spirits come next Monday, next Tuesday, when we smash Tottenham at Old Trafford and everyone's regained hope and we're back on for the title. So I guess we'll see you all then. Cheerio.
Good night.
Good night from me.
Good night.